What's going on? This is Theo Gremminger from PlayerProfiler. It's Dynasty Rookie Draft Week and Dynasty Rookie Draft Weekend for a lot of Dynasty fantasy managers out there. And we're looking to crush our Dynasty drafts and build our team that can dominate not only this year, but for many years in the future. We know that the 2024 draft class is very fantasy friendly. We have multiple quarterbacks, multiple wide receivers. We have one of the better tight ends in quite some time in Brock Bowers. And we even had a couple of running backs land very, very well. But let's talk about a couple rules that you can follow when going through your Dynasty rookie draft that'll help you not only put yourself in a position to do very well no matter what league you're in, but also some mistakes to avoid that can hurt you for years to come in your future Dynasty success. So sort of the most important rule in Dynasty when in a Dynasty rookie draft is it's May. We're not in September. You are not drafting to fill out a lineup. You are drafting usually the best player available. And when you go with a positional need over best player available, that should be because of sort of a tie where those two guys are in a tier break. So, for example, if you have J.J. McCarthy and Rome Odunze in the same sort of tier in terms of your super flex dynasty league, but you really, really need a quarterback, that's a little bit different. But what you see a lot of times is really, really good fantasy managers still get nervous while they're on the clock and say, I'm weak at running back 2 or wide receiver 3, and I'm going to pass on this great talent in order to take this other player because he plays a particular position that I'm weak at. Draft the best player available. Usually those sort of elite guys are the guys that are going to gain the most value throughout the summer when we start seeing the sort of the camp reports coming through, and worry about fixing your lineup later. Rookie draft weekend is not the time for you to fix every single hole on your dynasty team. Rookie draft weekend is the time for you to build your roster, get it better, and then go from there. Best player available, usually, unless the players are tied in a tier, you're going to like the way your results look by sticking to that plan for sure most of the time. Another rule to think about is you don't have to use your pick when you're on the clock. Now, when you get to the first round, I'm sure a lot of times, a lot of you are not going to want to flip that current 2024 first for a 2025 first. A lot of you are going to want to use it. But when you get to the third round, the fourth round, the fifth round, there are certain players that you're going to have that you're going to say, I really want this guy on my team. But take a step back and realize you don't have to use the pick in order to make that pick successful. You don't have to choose a player. A lot of times, the best possible move for you to make when you're on the clock is to trade that pick for a future pick in the same round with a little something on top. For example, if I'm picking in the third round this year, there's a bunch of targets that I like, but I don't have a problem accepting a 2025 third with maybe a 2024 fourth on top. A lot of managers are going to overpay because you're on the clock and they sort of get FOMO that they need to get that player. Trading for future picks, you're going to appreciate having those, especially when you're talking about future second round picks. And we'll talk about seconds later. Trading for future firsts is often difficult to do, but it's a lot easier to trade for future seconds. And a lot of times those future second round picks are exactly what you need to put a trade over the top in your favor. The player you select can lose value. The future pick that you trade for will not lose value. Future picks cannot get injured. Future picks cannot fail. And future picks are not going to lose value. Future picks are only going to gain value and give you more leverage in trades throughout the season. Another good rule to follow is sort of coming off of our previous rule. Don't be the manager that's so quick to trade away your future firsts and your future second round picks. Those picks are very difficult to try to reaccumulate during the year. You're going to have to give up very premium assets to get first and seconds in a lot of competitive dynasty leagues this year. Think about these picks in terms of raw numbers. You're not giving up a random second round pick next year. You're giving up, call it pick 17, call it pick 18. Does this pick, would I give up pick 18 to make this deal happen? I know that sounds a little funny where obviously the math in your head is the same. You understand that like the 205, 206, 207 are slotted into actual real numbers. But when you start using it in your head that you're giving up the 15th, potentially the 15th overall pick in your rookie draft, the 16th overall pick in your rookie draft, it just has a little more weight in your decision process. When you're trading away a future third, a lot of times a future third, you might think, oh, it's going to be a late third. Doesn't always happen. Injuries happen. Certain players don't live up to expectations. Sometimes that incredible roster that you think is going to win the league finishes 5th in the league. So you could potentially also be giving up a future third. You might end up giving up like the 28th overall pick. So be very careful when trading away your future first and your future seconds. If I'm going to move a future first or a future second in a deal, it better be to get me a really good player, not a short-term fill-in. And if it's going to be a short-term fill-in, it better be an older veteran that's set to absolutely smash. And my team better be ready to win. Be very careful when trading away those future firsts and future seconds. The next thing, and this is going to apply to this year as much as any year, know your tiers. Every single draft is going to have great players. Even the kind of the bad NFL drafts usually end up with some guys that are really good players for dynasty and certainly for redraft and fantasy in general. But know your tiers. And this year, your top tier in Superflex Dynasty Rookie Drafts is the top 8 players. The top 8 players give you the big 4 quarterbacks, which is Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy. Throw Brock Bowers in there as one of the better tight end prospects we've seen all time, and a tight end that was selected in the top 15 picks in the NFL draft. Then you need to throw in, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously Malik Neighbors, and despite the landing spot, Rome Odunze. That is your top 8. Those players are going to have multiple Pro Bowls from them. Now, will all 8 of them hit? No. But the chances that those 8 are going to provide big-time values are a better bet than any other pocket segment in this draft. It's just the way it is. The top 8, if your league is devaluing the top 8, pounce on that before your draft starts. Do yourself a favor and get into that top 8. The top 8 is going to provide great returns. Now, if you're in single QB leagues, the top 4 is the cleanest tier in this entire draft. And there's certainly players behind Rome Odunze that could outscore him this year. But when you look at his career, he's a better bet than a lot of those wide receivers that went later on in the first round. Now, the next tier, if you're in Superflex, this is a fun one. If you're in a Superflex league, the next tier will include Brian Thomas Jr. And again, these tiers are in no particular order. If you want our rankings, there are plenty of places here on Player Profiler. You can find them right here on Player Profiler YouTube. But we're talking about tiers. In Superflex, the next tier is going to be Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, the 3 wide receivers, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix, the 2 quarterbacks who were selected in the first round, and then the 2 running backs, Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson. So you have your first 8, then you sort of have your next 7. Those are kind of the cleanest tiers. When you get past those guys, there's plenty of guys in the second round that can help you. But again, you're betting on the 2 running backs with a direct path to volume this year. You're betting on 2 quarterbacks selected in the first round this year. You're betting on 3 wide receivers that all have an opportunity to be the leading wide receiver on their team either this year or into the future. You have a bunch of guys after that, and the tiers after that become a little less clear. But top 8 and then next 7, that's the one you want to be looking at. Now, the next rule in rookie drafts is sort of a fun rule, and that's go and get your guy. You see all these people on Twitter and fantasy articles this week saying how Kamani Vidal is my big sleeper. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's fine. But a lot of these people are going to walk into their rookie drafts thinking, I'm going to get Kamani Vidal at like the end of the third round, the early fourth round. And if you, for every person who reads these sort of articles and gets these sort of hot names, the Kamani Vidals, the Tyrone Tracys, the Troy Franklin definitely, has one that didn't go on day one or day two, but he's certainly got people enthusiastic about him right now. Those sort of players do not fall simply because of draft capital, because dynasty managers in every single league, you're going to have some that are going to be willing to push guys up because they're the hot guys and the hot names and the hot situations. And a lot of times they're right. A lot of times they're wrong. But at the end of the day, once you get past round 2 and into round 3 and round 4, go and get your guy. There is no such thing as reaching in the 4th round. When you're in the 4th round of a rookie draft, there is no such thing as reaching. You are going to feel a lot better about how your rookie draft turned out if you get that player that you really wanted to get in the 4th round. The 3rd round's a little bit tricky. 3rd round, sometimes value falls. But at the end of the day, if you want the names like Tyrone Tracy, Kamani Vidal, Audric Estime, whoever your sleeper day 3 pick was, be aggressive in getting them. If that's something you want on your dynasty roster and you have conviction, be aggressive. There is no such thing as reaching in round 4 and round 5. The hit rates on success for round 4 and round 5 players in dynasty rookie drafts is very, very low. The hit rates for 3rd round picks can be hit or miss. But oftentimes those guys do not last on your roster for a long time. So be super aggressive. Go and get your guy. Don't be crazy early on in the draft. But when you get to the middle rounds, if you're in a seven round rookie draft, be as aggressive as you want when you get to round 4, round 5 to go and get your guy. The next rule is to understand what your team goal is this year. And if you are a rebuilding manager, this is a great draft for you to find values. When you start talking about the 1st round, if Rome Odunze starts slipping into the back of that top tier and he's available around the 108 in Superflex, or if he happens to fall to the 109, and Brock Bowers for that matter, if he falls to sort of those positions, go and get him. Because Devontae Adams this year for Bowers, and obviously DJ Moore, Keenan Allen this year for Rome Odunze, down the line, those guys are going to eat, and they might eat this year. Talent finds a way in the NFL. For every single Jackson Smith and Jigba situation, you have CeeDee Lamb rookie year. CeeDee Lamb drafted into Amari Cooper, who at the time had about as much dynasty value as DJ Moore does right now, and Michael Gallup, who was being treated as sort of a wide receiver 2 in redraft and best ball back then. They draft CeeDee Lamb in the 1st round. CeeDee Lamb ends up leading that entire wide receiver room for the second half of the year. Now, that might not happen with Rome Odunze, but I would bet that his rookie season is more impactful than Jackson Smith and Jigba's was last year. I would bet that pretty considerably. So when you get a guy like Rome Odunze, you're going to have some fearful dynasty managers who say, he's boxed out target-wise with guys like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. But at the end of the day, you're talking about extremely talented player with a extremely talented quarterback in Caleb Williams. That's a guy to bet on. But even when you get past the Brock Bowers and Rome Odunze targets, especially for rebuilding managers, you have some really fun situations to bet on. At the quarterback spot, if you're a rebuild, Michael Penix is one you want to go get, because you're talking about a top 10 draft capital player in the NFL draft at quarterback who's going to fall to a number of 2nd rounds in Superflex leagues because people are fearful of the boxed out situation in year 1. Michael Penix is almost a no-brainer. If wins and losses mean nothing to you in this particular year and you are rebuilding, then Michael Penix absolutely is a target for you. After Michael Penix, there's a number of other players that are interesting. Talk about Jermaine Burton. Now, Jermaine Burton has steamed up a little bit in early rookie draft ADP, but Jermaine Burton is still very much a player that could explode in 2025. He's going to have some useful weeks in 2024 as like the wide receiver 3 in a very good offense and with a very good quarterback in Joe Burrow and the Bengals. But Jermaine Burton has a pathway to taking over for T. Higgins in 2025. Then you factor in a guy like Jalen McMillan, who's going under the radar. Jalen McMillan could be the heir apparent to Chris Godwin. When I look at the running back position, there's Jalen Wright. Now, Jalen Wright's not going to be cheap in rookie drafts, but if Raheem Mostert, last year's RB2 overall, moves on next year, which he very much could as an older player, then Jalen Wright steps right into that spot. Jalen Wright also has contingent upside if Devon Achane misses time. So Jalen Wright's a really fun one. If I'm in a rebuild this year and there's an injury to Achane or Mostert, I can also potentially flip Jalen Wright for a lot more than I paid for him. So he's got a path two ways as a rebuilding target. Another player that's a rebuilding target that can help you this year as well. This sort of a player that any build can support. Marshawn Lloyd. Marshawn Lloyd can be a handcuff plus this year as one of the best handcuffs in the NFL to Josh Jacobs. If Josh Jacobs missed time, Marshawn Lloyd would explode this year. But even if Josh Jacobs plays, Marshawn Lloyd can carve out a weekly role. But the most interesting thing about Marshawn Lloyd from a rebuild is Marshawn Lloyd could potentially take over with Josh Jacobs essentially playing like a one-year role in Green Bay. Sometimes when players switch teams, it doesn't always work as well as you think, especially at the running back position. So know what your team is. But if you are a rebuilding team, this is a really fun draft for you to dive into. Another rule that's sort of an evergreen rule in Dynasty rookie drafts is that second round picks are the most undervalued assets in Dynasty. Dynasty managers are very protective. Well, decent Dynasty managers are very protective of their first round picks. But even some good Dynasty managers are willing to part with a second this year or in 2025. This year, you also was sort of flat. We talked about the top tiers. When you get past those top tiers, there's a lot of like back and forth and a little bit of like differences in terms of where people are ranking some of those players that are going to go in the second, early third, sort of a wider tier there. But understand that the second round always produces fantasy talent, and it will continue to do so this year. Last year, in the second round of rookie drafts, you had access to players like Devon Achane, like Sam Laporta, like Jaden Reed. Those guys were going in the second round. They all gained considerable dynasty value this year, and it happens every year. Talk about in years past, you saw players like Aaron Jones, like Brandon Ayuk, guys fall, Tony Pollard, guys fall into like the second round of rookie drafts, and people sort of discount them. But at the end of the day, the hit rates on especially early to mid second round picks are solid. So if you have a league mate that's willing to part with seconds, take some shots on acquiring those additional seconds. They might cost a little less than you think. It might be a great way for you to pivot off of a veteran that maybe you don't have a lot of confidence in, but somebody in your league might. Get yourself some seconds and go ahead and trade for 20-25 seconds as well. Talked about that earlier. The value of having those 20-25 seconds in your back pocket throughout the year to make future deals, you're going to be happy that you acquired those during the draft. The last well, not the last one, but another rule to follow by is know your roster. So if you have James Cook on your dynasty roster, prioritizing Ray Davis makes a lot of sense. If you have Rachaad White on your roster, Bucky Irving makes a lot of sense. If you have Saquon Barkley, Will Shipley makes a lot of sense. And if you have T. Higgins, getting Jermaine Burton makes a lot of sense. You're sort of betting on the same situation twice with potential outs that you could hit a blackjack split, so to speak. Next year, T. Higgins signs with somebody else. Jermaine Burton steps in the T. Higgins role. You have T. Higgins in a similar role elsewhere, if not a better one, and Jermaine Burton in that exact same role as T. Higgins. So those are all sort of handcuff plays. Another one would be if you have Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix slips, prioritize him. Don't overpay to make these deals happen. But when they present themselves and you can make the selections during your rookie draft, know your roster. Handcuffing matters most in Dynasty. It matters more than it does in redraft. Dynasty, you have that handcuff. You're basically investing in a situation. And when it comes to teams like Buffalo when it comes to players like Saquon with Will Shipley, you're investing in a top-notch offense situation. So know your roster. And the final rule is the picks versus player debate. This week on podcasts, this week on Twitter, this week in articles on sites that like PlayerProfiler and all across of fantasy, you're going to hear arguments for trading a rookie pick for a player or trading this particular veteran for a rookie pick. You can win in Dynasty doing things either way. It's about extracting value. There is not a right answer in this situation. But one thing, which is one of the truest things in Dynasty, is the best way to acquire the high-end talent, the true difference makers that hold the most trade equity for you, it's usually going to be a rookie pick. So if you can get a great deal done, it's fine and you can win that way. But just understand that despite the risk, making rookie pick selections, especially when we talk about like the first round, that's your best path to getting those elite asset players. Think about it like this. It's a matter of like a guy like Justin Jefferson. You're talking about the perfect thread the needle example, a mid first round pick to a late first round pick that has returned exceptional value. Using that draft pick at the time, you could have traded for a veteran for sure. But taking the chance on a rookie there and using that first round pick paid immense dividends. The idea is you're getting the top-notch potential asset for the cheapest possible price that they will cost a lot of times. So I know that's sort of a back and forth thing. Different ways to win in Dynasty. Have conviction with either the trade you make or the pick you made. Appreciate all your support during this entire Dynasty Rookie Draft season. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. Make sure you're subscribing to Player Profiler YouTube. Check out Dynasty Life. Check out Sonic Truth. Check out all of my Dynasty content right here at Player Profiler. And read my Dynasty articles at playerprofiler.com. Go crush your rookie drafts.